Hey, good morning there. Nice, beautiful day just dawning. New day is dawning, so there's not much time to waste, of course, if you haven't chosen. Um, Many are called, if you are chosen. We talked about this, choosing. So many are called by God, but they are choosing to go the way of the world, which is already not even your choice. A lot of people didn't know they had a choice because they haven't been taught. So we're in this time. Time is accelerating for the transition from human to godly person to a rapidly changing likeness of Jesus. So we're dawning this new day, but the acceleration of deterioration, such time as this, so many people are falling apart rapidly, and they have a choice to surrender to the Lord or deteriorate. So, spiritual warfare 101 again. People didn't get the memo, they didn't read the memo, they didn't listen. So, in order to take the city, you got to bind the strong man, the principality, the territorial demons. Okay, thoroughly understand that, but hardly anybody else does. And you take his goods, which are the people. It's not his stuff. The earth produced all the gold and the jewels and the paperbacks, paper money and everything. It's the people. You bind the strong man in order to take the enemy's people. And it's all done by teaching. So it's like, it is not just like. If you know how to fight the enemy correctly, then you are a territorial person in a God way, because it may be just the mayor or the governor or the so this new regime God's putting in place, the new government, God over men, govern God over men. He's putting his new people in position. The thing is, you can't fight it with sticks and stones. Sticks and stones may break the bones, and names will hurt you. The devil's spells will hurt you. So you got to rise up in this time. Don't be a snake. Don't be like the white snake. Here we go again. Here we go again. Like so many people want to walk alone, says in the song, but it's teamwork. It's not walking alone. So to take the Bible Belt back from the devil, take states, cities, countries, take nations, you have to know how the enemy stole it in the first place, which we talked about covenant contracts that Jesus canceled. So in order to get deed and jurisdiction, the enemy had to split the land, and then he had to write deed and said that he sell you the property, but there's strings attached. You have to pay taxes to Caesar. You have to pay taxes to the devil's regime. You have to pay taxes to the evil government. So we're breaking free from that jurisdiction. So covenant contracts, jurisdictions. Contracts are covenants. And once fulfilled, you get monies, and then the contract's fulfilled. So Jesus purchased all property, all people, through his covenant contract of blood that was shed. Same as what we talked about where Cain got murdered. Cain murdered Abel. Abel got murdered. Excuse me. Cain murdered Abel. Then God had to give a new man to Eve. So in order to take jurisdiction, you have to start out like we talked about in your family. and then spread your tent pegs, enlarge your tent. Not only just pray for your health, your spiritual health, your family's spiritual health. Then you start praying for neighbors. Love thy neighbors as thyself. So there's massive selfishness out there now. And what people don't realize because it hasn't been taught, that's why you have to repeat what is being said. The fear is a prayer that's sent out and attracts the demons to you. It's like poop, flies to poop. So God is, you could say, like the honey, the sweet unadulterated honey. And that what you project out, that's your prayer to God to encompass the city, God to take over the city, because of covenant contract that was already fulfilled. But if you don't know it was full and filled fully, then you can't take jurisdiction. You can't even be the authority over your own house, because people perish for lack of knowledge. So what is being said is, if you know how the enemy works, then you can unravel the works of the enemy. It's like that nice sweater you get for Christmas. Just hold the one string while the devil runs, and then he's left naked. So just like the 7 sons of one priest, 7 sons of one Sceva. Paul, we know. Jesus, we know. Who are you? So, because they don't know how to fight correctly, there are so many babies out there who think they are disciples. But Paul said he had 14 years to come to that point to where the first person, which is Jesus, spoke through Paul, out of Paul's mouth, said, I once knew a man 14 years, caught up to the third heaven, in the body, out of the body I know not. So there's hundreds of thousands being caught up. But the problem is we understand up there, but down here we're fragmented because we are looking for the other disciples. And they're few and far between. But there may be 1 in 100,000 or 1 in a million, depending on what part of the nation or nations you live in. You might be like you're walking alone. Here we go again. We're not walking alone. Spiritual warfare 101. The enemy's attacking to no end. And as we talked about the graves, 1031, the graves, this has been happening a long time, but now it's happening in massive scale, to where the fear and the fright and the scared, people are scared because they respect devils. Or you could say the superstitious. So I went to do an estimate a few months ago, and a lady was talking about if I can build window screens and all that. Yeah, we do that all the time. We're handymen, okay? So carpenters, painters, whatever. So she had, looking at the windowsills, and there's just tons of salt laying across all the windowsills, and even the door threshold. So I look at that. Wow. She is very superstitious, which means she respects demons. It's written in the book where Paul said he saw an inscription on an altar to an unknown God. So you can't fight the devil if it's unknown. The devil tears at your mind and your soul like claws, like Halloween claws. And he has claws, C-L-A-U-S-E, claws and jurisdiction over the people, because their fear brings them into that covenant contract with Satan. Because it says, fear only God. God did not give you a spirit of fear. So we're talking about a massive haunting that's already here. And these people will not sleep in peace. Now, you can say they won't sleep, but they'll sleep, but they won't rest. Like, R.I.P. in Halloween, rest in peace. They put all the graves up front, rest in peace. But there's a lot of people not resting in peace that are even dead. And you talk about Lazarus and the rich man. So the rich man is in a cage, a virtual cage, a selfishness. Long story, but if you study spiritual warfare 101, we're talking about taking cities, countries, and nations. So, but you can't fight the enemy wrongly. You can't take a baseball bat and whack them upside the head. Because it's all done in the love of many. So it says the love of many growing cold, which is selfishness. Which selfishness produces fear. And that's what you're projecting out. So if you were a projector in the movie screen, onto the movie screen, like a drive-in theater, if you're the projector and you're projecting out, that's your prayers that go out, and it projects on a white screen. Now that's symbolic of when you pray outward, it causes fire of the Holy Spirit to go out north, south, east, and west to compass. Now, if you type in the word compass, Bible, it's in Jeremiah 30, 31, 22, 30, 22, something like that. Compass. Your prayers compass mankind north, south, east, and west. So, but the biggest problem is there's all these really powerful ministers that heal the sick and raise the dead in the past, like Smith, Wigglesworth, Reinhard Bonnke. And, I talked with him a little bit. Read his books. And it's like, wow, get kicked out of church for healing people. Get kicked out of church for praying. Because the church isn't the church. The church is you. So in order to bind the strong man to take his goods, two things have to happen. You have to know how the enemy took the area. So it's uncovering history, historical facts. Now, once you understood there, then you pray correctly, same as Daniel did. Daniel humbled himself and prayed, and it deployed Michael, the warring angel. Okay, then you proceed to take his goods. The only way to take his goods is to disciple them. Because Jesus sent them out to heal the sick and raise the dead. Then when they came back, then he reconciled them. And he said that now their book. So you could say he's sitting there with a big pen. Now he started writing their book. Spiritually speaking, they're a book in the Lamb's Book of Life. So the fragmentation of mankind, still killing a story, the devourer is taking people out, tons of people out, thousands of people per day are being taken out. And they believed in the fear. They watched too many horror movies. Just like in 2019, 2020, I was just couldn't believe that these people, because you mask, when you're doing an operation, you mask so you don't spit in their cavity. So, so they quarantine the healthy, which you don't quarantine the healthy, you quarantine the sick. Did you watch those movies where they quarantine the sick? So everybody's under quarantine and everybody's wearing masks everywhere, and it's just like, I just couldn't believe it. Nonetheless, that my mother worked in the vax department. Back then they called it health department, and they kept the cultures of plagues alive in order to make vaccines. They had to recreate it, keep the plagues, the diseases, the evil diseases alive in order to make vaccines. Now, my mother knew that a lot of stuff you just had to write it out, and that's like when they invented the saline solution, the IV intravenous. If they could keep them alive 3.5 days, which is normally you don't bury people, you don't bury them till the fourth day, because a lot of people resurrected. That's why they really did put bells in strings in the graveyard. So if you could stay alive about 3 to 4 days, they could keep you alive, keep you hydrated with salt. Jesus says, we are the salt of the world. He's the salt. How will be salted, savored, flavored? So if they could keep them alive, they would get through the valley of the shadow of death. They would get through the death that's coming to take them out, snuff them out. And they would survive. But a lot of people, when they get healthy again, go right back into the ditch. Just like a lot of people that were poor, we prayed for their finances. And they got hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then they forgot about God. Just like in Egypt, they forgot about Joseph and forgot about Joseph's God. So then they succumbed to the enemy, the fear and the control, manipulation, and death and everything. Death had to come to Egypt. Death had to come to the firstborn in Egypt. There's a lot to be said about this, but Spiritual Warfare 101, it would be great. It will be great when the disciples get together. They have a meeting of the minds and souls to take entire cities and nations for God. Like I said, we're out there, we're few and far between. So God called people to certain subdivisions, certain houses, certain states, and they knew they were supposed to be there. But instead of seeking out the other disciples, they went to the false church, which is the brick and mortar, because you are the church. And they were looking for God in a building. Might as well be a mortuary. Might as well be the funeral parlor. Might as well be the graveyard. God left. When you get married, you leave the church. They throw rice and everything at you. You leave the church. And you cleave to one another. It's the same like the marriage supper and lamb, 7:14 of Revelation. But people are stuck in time of the riding this loop of history, because all they have is the textbook, but they have not God. It's just like when I went to International Theological, they asked me what kind of ministry I was doing, and I told them I was working on the streets and everything. I said, good, don't stop doing that, because all we can teach you is how to be a teacher. So you go to theological school, and all you can learn is how to be a teacher. You can't learn to be a disciple, because it's not OJT. So they found out I was already OJT. I was walking it out, because we are the church. We, being sent one, sent out, was already going out, doing the works of the Lord. And they told me, never stop doing that. We'll just help you to learn some more of the history. Okay, now let's jump back to where you're riding this merry-go-round of history. And the merry-go-round is spinning faster and faster. The best thing for you is to get slung off into the world in order to do your job. Like, you don't go to college for 20 years and then you work for the college another 20 years and then you retire from a stale desk job of being a teacher and never doing anything, never have any legacy for the Lord, never leave anything behind in a sense of making a mark in this world. You didn't make a mark. Might as well be drinking bourbon of Maker's Mark. Marker's Mark. Maker's Mark. And not doing anything at all, just hanging out at the bar. Buck up to the bar. So we're living in such massive insanity because the people, if my people humble themselves and submit to the Lord, then He will show you how to take down the enemy. First and foremost in you, and then in your family, and then in your city block, county, city, nations. And you can't fight with guns and ropes and hang them from trees and whatever. So the people in government are doing away with the enemy with the law, by the law. But it's more than that. You got to allow them to do their job because they were called to live by the sword, die by the sword, live by the gun, die by the guns. But we're not. We're called to live by the Spirit. As Daniel, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Zephaniah, Malachi, then so Isaiah 60, we talked about the greatest darkness is the greatest amount of fear. Fear you can feel. You could cut it with a knife. It's like it's symbolically. And I laugh because I used to cry about it because, I used to sympathize with them, but you can't sympathize. You can empathize because you've been there. But you can't jump in the ditch and join them in their fear and share their wine with the winos. And no, you know the way out. All just give them a hand up. Just get them out of the ditch. And but I'm not. It's. But the other thing is discernment, because some people are supposed to be in the ditch, and you got to leave them in the ditch. Because you can't take a city unless you find the disciples first. So when the people realized the disciples had the power and authority of Jesus, they just wanted them to walk by them and they would receive the Holy Spirit and power and healing, just like the lady touched Jesus' garment. Just touched him. And it was a good thievery because he said, power went out from me. He wanted to find out who touched him. Now, she knew if she could just touch him, she'd be healed. But it's more than that. It's just like Zacchaeus, climbed up the tree, and then Jesus knew that this guy was going to be a disciple. He just needed some discipleship. So South Florida is left for dead. South Florida, the third part, which is all south there. There's so many factors because the sewage, like when the houses used to be on pylons on the beach, on sand, they had pylons that were like, 3 or 4 feet off the ground. Then you have the beams and everything. They're about 5 foot off the ground. 5 is like the hand of God favor. Then they could use a septic tank to get rid of the poo because it flowed down. But when they start putting houses on the ground, they have to pump the poo up and down the street. So we're talking massive sewage Soda County, which is Sarasota. So everything really south of Hillsboro. This used to be Hillsboro, Hills and Burrows. So this place is just saved for a time of season to help people get out of South Florida, out of the sewer systems. Like even Key West, like the last marker of the Keys is a sewer lid. It's a sewer lid. And it's crazy. People don't realize they're living in a sewer, and it's a demonic sewer. But let's not go too deep into doo-doo over there. So, to bind the strong man to take his territory, we've already done most of the binding the strong man in America. And the way you bind the strong man is you got to know how the devil took the land, and you got to know how to take it back through the canceling of covenant contracts, which Jesus did with his blood. That's why I talk about pleading his blood, washed in the blood. Your robe is white as snow because you've been washed in the blood. So, people didn't get the memo, so I got to keep saying the same thing over and over until we get breakthrough. Then I can draw you pictures on the maps, which I did in the past, but I can draw more specifically how the enemy took your city, how to bind the strong man in your city, how to take a city for Jesus, but it's all teamwork. Like the general is the private, the general is a general enlistment. It's all team, not a hierarchy, because Satan, pride, Lucifer, and that's the same thing that's going on in the church, the brick and mortar, the whitewashed tombs, the mausoleums. They're all trying to be Lucifer on the stage. And the congregation is sitting there waiting for the punchline. They keep going to church, sitting on the bench, getting sleepy. While the guy's on the stage, and he's getting the money, he's getting to swim a pool, he's getting an extra secretary to go to bed with, he's getting all this stuff. It's just like that church. Tony's a good guy, but the thing is death. He's in the dead zone. The principality's in the dead zone. And the main principalities in this area are along County Line Road, but people don't even know where County Line Road is because they renamed it University Parkway. Unity and Diversity Parkway. And he's in the dead zone. So when Andy murdered his wife, his neighbor, and the pastor, the devil's kicking butt, taking names, and he's saying, this is my territory. Satan is saying, this is his territory. And nobody's going to get breakthrough in his territory. And it was a Baptist church, which, if you go up in the Bible Belt, which right now I'm in South Florida, I'm going back to the Bible Belt in a couple of days. So it's all based on the baptism of water, but no fire, no anointing, no seeing, believing, hearing, speaking. It's all a watered down gospel. And all they have is textbook. They have no relationship with the Lord. Otherwise, they would be taking the city. So there's Baptist churches on every corner. So, and when you drive up there and you listen to certain radio stations, it's like you're listening to 1945 again. You're like Back to the Future. And the preacher's even saying the Baptist churches. And it's crazy. It's like, did I just go through a time warp? Honey, turn the radio station. Turn the radio station to contemporary. Oh, God. So they're stuck in this loop of time in history, like the rich man in the virtual cage while Lazarus is in heaven. And the rich man can see Lazarus in heaven, in a heavenly state, while he's in a cage, a virtual cage, which is talked about in some of the books they've removed from the canonization of the Bible because they want to keep you an infant. So that Lucifer could take your money, he take your children, even take your wife away from you. So how many men are going to let their wives be deceived and beguiled, raped and robbed and pillaged their family? Because they won't take up their authority, they won't ask the Lord, what happened? Why did it happen? Where did it happen? And how do I take my family back from the devil? Whew. Long story. But I have 900 and some videos out here. Even if I got one person looking at them in one day, I'd have 900 views. Because of 900 videos. Well, we're getting like 10, 15 views because people don't want the truth. And some people are waiting for the punchline, yeah, but I can't really give it to you. You need to get it from Jesus. That's the issue. Once you get enough revelation from the Lord directly, then we can proceed forward. Because you are an army of one. Where one goes, we all go. Where you're an army of one with Jesus to help build the team. It's just like if you're playing a game, we have to be a team. We have to be a team. So, for what it's worth today, bind the strong man, take cities. Territorial demons are the principalities who control territories through satanic blood covenants and contracts. So now, the people would be scared enough now for you to minister to them, because you have the way, the truth, and life, which is Jesus within you. And you can be a counselor, a discipleship, a discipler, a disciple maker, and go out and make disciples of all nations. And quit playing this game of church and keep watering down the gospel. And why on earth, if you're going to make a fake church, at least don't call it a Baptist church, because that church is after the design of John the Baptist, would baptize with water, which is just an outward sign. And then they corrupted it to where, look at me, I've been baptized, I'm a Baptist. Instead of baptized by fire in the name of Jesus, in the name of I am God, the great I am. So you got it. Like and subscribe. Hey, this has to burn in you, so I have to repeat until it becomes part of you, until you're speaking it, believing it, projecting it as your prayer goes out like a dragnet that will consume the enemy. The 153 fish didn't lose one, separated them. Just as we talked about the airplane that went down the Hudson, if you don't count the stewardess and the captains, saved 153 people alive in that time. Symbolic of God's putting out a net, looking for his disciples and putting them in the right order after the Melchizedek priesthood. You got it? Barely. God bless you. Amen.